I'm Terry Markham with Uprising, and we are continuing our social media series called It's All Connected. And today we are doing sort of a part two talking about online predatory behavior, but this time we are going to hear from a different point of view. And I have with me here Ashley Garcia, who is actually a survivor of human trafficking, and she is a mom, and Crystal Martin, who is the co-founder, or I'm sorry, the founder and director of Sweetwater Against Trafficking, and also a mom. And both of you guys have had experiences with your children getting preyed on online, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's what we want to
Yeah.
talk about today. So I'm going to pass it over to you guys, and let's just start by maybe just give us like a little brief overview about your experience dealing with online predators.
You can go first, Crystal.
Okay. So in 2017, my daughter was introduced to a chat site called Omegle. And within a week and a half, my daughter was targeted by 25 to 30 different individuals online until we found out about it. And so we found in the state that we didn't have enough resources for our youth. And so we decided to start a nonprofit and focus on prevention, education, and awareness.
Awesome.
And my, at the time, 11-year-old daughter was found to have found secret access to internet and had been giving out personal information and was being groomed by a couple of men on the game Roblox. So it took us a while to recognize that that's what was going on.
So that's my next question. I want to hear about how you both actually made the discovery that this was happening to your kids. We can start with Crystal. We'll just have a method.
Okay. So I found out because we were having my son's birthday party, and a group of girls decided that they wanted to stay over. My son was having a sleepover as well. And throughout that time, you know, they were up in their room doing their own thing, thinking that they're doing girly things. And then the next day, my foster sister called me and said, hey, you know, my daughter came home and said that there were some questionable things going on. And so we had to look into it and found out that she was talking to a bunch of other people along with some of the other girls. And they were doing video chats with individuals that said that their cameras were broke and that they were 16, but they sounded like full-grown men. So we looked into it, and that's how we kind of found out.
Wow.
So in my case, my daughter wasn't allowed to have, I mean, she did have a flip phone to contact some of her other family, but she was not allowed to have access to chat sites or social media or anything. And so her way around that was she found one of our old phones, one of my husband's old phones, and figured out that she could connect it to our Wi-Fi and was using it to play games and get on chat sites. And so I only found it by chance. I was looking in her backpack for some makeup that I thought she had stolen from me. And I found the phone and was like, why is she carrying around an old phone? And so after looking through it, I quickly realized, you know, that she was going into Roblox in particular and was going into chat rooms and had almost immediately figured out ways around the filter that they have up that prevents giving out personal information, and was just freely giving out stuff that, I mean, everybody talks to their kids about stranger danger, and yet it still didn't seem to register with her.
Yeah, because I think I've heard your story before, of course, but I know I've heard you share before that even though you had conversations with your stepdaughter about stranger danger and not giving out personal information, that again, this person or people on the other side were pretending to be her age, right? And
Mhm.
it's just like all knowledge goes out the window sometimes whenever they truly think it's someone like from their class on the other side.
It's shocking how easy it is to even somebody like my daughter who's been like trained and trained and trained from my own experiences for her to be so easily fooled and for them to just flip things around and make it seem like to me it was obvious that it was grooming behavior, but to her it was just, oh, okay. So it's okay to tell this information because this person is my age and goes to the same school as me.
Yeah, can you share a little bit more about kind of how that back and forth and the conversations look like when you discovered it, and specifically how she got around that filter? Because I think a lot of parents, I know my kids are into like Minecraft and Roblox and stuff, and you kind of act on faith that okay, they have this filter where it literally will block if they're trying to say I live here. But
Yeah.
your daughter got around that. Will you share a little bit more?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously it was very much like the conversation starts with just like, "Hi, hey, what games do you like to play? What room do you like to play in?" And then it was like, "How old are you?" And he, he seemed to be asking all the questions. So for example, he would say, she said, "I'm 11." And he said, "Oh, I'm 11 too. Where do you live?" She said, "I live in Sheridan, Wyoming." And he was like, "I live in Sheridan, Wyoming. What school do you go to?" And then she would tell her school. And then he would say, "Oh, I go to that school too." And when she would ask questions like, "Well, who is your teacher?" or whatever, he would kind of just skip around it and be like, "Well, we're not in the same class because I would remember you."
Hmm.
And then flip around and just start asking her questions again. And the way that my daughter found out to get so the filter on Roblox is like if you send your address, like the number and the street name, it'll make it all blocked out so you can't read it, like a password kind of. And so she figured out that if she sent it pieces at a time as individual messages, that the filter wouldn't catch it. So she would send like the number and hit send, and then send the street name and then hit send. And that would all go through because it wasn't coming out for the filter as our full address. It was coming out as a number and then just like a name. So I mean, at 11 years old, she figured out how a way around the filter within like a couple of texts. I mean, there was a couple that were blocked out, and then she immediately was like, "Oh, this is how I do it."
That's crazy to me how smart kids are with technology. I want to jump back to you, Crystal, because I also have heard your story several times before, so I feel like I know it really well. And one thing that's interesting to me is that when you did make the discovery, and tell us a little bit more about like when you started to dig in and you realized that this wasn't like a one-time occurrence, right?
Yeah, it wasn't a one time. So, like during the sleepover, they were doing that at her friend's house, and that's where she was actually initially um, shown how to go about um, getting into this app. And it wasn't even an app, it was actually a website that they could just like get into. And I had the parent apps, I had all of that stuff, but she found a way to get away from it. And I have no clue to this day how she was able to get away or around that app. Um, and then there were times when she would, just disappear. She would go up to her room. She started spending a lot of time in her room. And it's like, okay, maybe she's starting that teenage phase, where she wants to spend time away from her brothers and away from her mom. And then she would be going to the bathroom a lot. And it's like, okay, well, this is a little odd. Um, so, it was over a week and a half that it just kept going. And then once we found out that all of this stuff was going on, I took her phone, I took her computer, and, I didn't handle it in the correct manner. And that's what I talk to a lot of our parents about is, you know, not freaking out and trying to talk with them and get to like rationally think. Um, because I wigged. I protective mama bear came out and it was a hot mess. And so I actually shut down my daughter. And so then it just kept progressing. And she would get phones from her friends at school. She would bring them home. She would use her laptop at the school and try and get on to talk with these predators. And so it's just like ongoing. And then she started having, some pretty serious sexual behaviors along with kiddos her age. And so finally I was like, you know what, we have to get treatment. We can't do anything. So while she was in treatment, we actually found out that she was introduced to pornography at 9 years old. So when we identified that, we started seeing, okay, well, that was the pattern that started leading to this risky behavior and trying to seek out that negative male attention in order to have that like sexual understanding and that sexual gratification that at that time she shouldn't have had. So, yeah, it was extremely ongoing. It was just one right after another. And then we started finding out more and putting together the pieces. And it was, very hard for our family.
Yeah, you've touched on so many things just now that I have a lot of follow-up
Sorry.
questions. No, it's okay. It's really good because you're hitting on a lot of stuff I wanted to make sure to cover. I want to go back real quick because you mentioned how you handled it, and that was going to be one of something that was popping in my head to ask was how you guys handled it because it's interesting. You went full on mama bear, and Ashley, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you handled it once you made this discovery?
So first I went full on like private eye, dug into everything I could. I wanted to know everything about the app. I looked through the phone, every tiny little thing I could get into, messages, deleted apps, anything I could find on there. And then of course I told her dad, and he immediately had that like panic, like we need to get on there and get a hold of him and meet up with him so we can kill him kind of like parent reaction. And I was more so worried about not only my daughter's safety, but my younger boys' safety as well, because she had disclosed, the school that they went to and the bus that they rode and their route home. And like they walked home from school together. And so my first thing was, we got a hold of one of our friends who's a computer programmer and asked if there was any way to trace these people. And then we got a hold of the police, and basically they said that there was no way to trace back to their server because they were getting onto different ones all the time. And so the best that they could do was basically just like circle the block every day after school. My kids were walking home. And then if there was any further contact that they would try to trace it. But that didn't happen. Obviously, we weren't going to allow her on that anymore. So
I think that's interesting and important to share because, as a parent, you're just going to go with your first instinct. And this came up when I interviewed Chris McDonald, who is our local Wyoming commander for our Internet Crimes Against Children task force. And he actually said the best thing that you can do, and I just want to state it for anyone who's watching this, is to like, it goes against the gut, but is to sort of not do anything. Like, don't respond to the person, don't delete the app, don't let them know that because he said you want to keep all those texts, all the photos, if they've been exchanging photos, you want to keep all of that evidence on your phone so that you can turn it in and they have a much stronger chance to catch that person. And so I thought that was really interesting because it does probably go against the grain. And I was surprised to learn he suggested who to report to. He said, start with your local police. And I don't typically think of my local PD as who I'd call if my kids, getting sent dirty pictures on Snapchat, but he said that that's the fastest way. And if they find credible threats, they can call in, the criminal investigations division to help them and to pass that case along too. So I just wanted to share that out there for anyone who's watching. To go back to some of the um, other things that you were hitting on, Crystal, let's talk a little bit about, you said this sort of affected your whole family. And that's one thing that's really interesting. Can you share a little bit about, I guess, for lack of better terms, some of the damage that this has caused you guys? How long you've been dealing with this? Do you feel like you still are having to handle some of this? Tell us a little bit about that.
So we had a lot of escalated behaviors when we started finding out about a lot of the sneakiness. When we would bust her in, whether it be finding a computer that she had gotten a hold of, or, even a phone that she got a hold of, we would try and discuss it with her. And then there would be like these escalated behaviors, because after we went to the police department, she initially went right back, and the very next day got on to one of these chat sites and told one of the predators that mom made her go to the police department, and mom did this and mom did that. So, when you were hitting on that, I was like, oh yeah. So, it's important for watchers to also talk to the kids about, we don't go and tell them, we can't. But it was, the behavioral issues. And then for my sons, I had young boys at the time, and I was terrified, so triggers were popping up. Okay, they can track our IP address, because unlike the predators, our IP addresses really don't change. And so it's like, okay, are they going to track our IP address because they're so super smart, and come and take my child or my children? Could there be something that happened there? So, I went into overdrive emotionally and protective wise. And then my boys started seeing the behaviors that my daughter was having and started recreating those behaviors. And then there were relationship issues that came out of it as well, because, my boyfriend at the time, he was trying to be supportive, but it was that victim shaming. She knew better. She had to do this, and she's choosing to be defiant. She's choosing to have these behaviors, and it started coming at her in a very Papa Bear type way, but in a way that created another boundary or barrier for us to be able to get through to her. And, so we ended up actually splitting up a lot because of that, and because of the distance it put in between us. But even to this day, my boys are still having behavioral problems because of the way that they saw that at such a vulnerable age. And then for me, I still have triggers. I mean, even though I'm well educated through all of it now, there are still those triggers. Okay, you went into the bathroom. Do you have a phone with you while you're in the bathroom? Did you sneak up to your room to talk to somebody? Are you watching porn? There's just like these random things that'll pop in my brain. And then I'm like, okay, what's going on? Even though we've worked through a lot of that with therapy dynamics and, open communication, and trying to encourage her to come forward when she's feeling vulnerable. So yeah, we're still dealing with it. It's been going on 4 years now.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned that she's had therapy, she's gone into treatment, and for anyone who doesn't know, all three of us here, we all live in Wyoming, which is a pretty rural state. How was your experience with trying to get help for your daughter?
Oh, it was a hot mess. I mean, I was calling out of state because I knew that she had to have a specific type of treatment in order to not put her in that category of that juvenile delinquent. When I was talking to places in Utah or talking to places in Colorado, we found that there was a wait list and that some of those treatment facilities were anywhere between $12,000 to $20,000 a month. And it wasn't doable. They wouldn't take insurance from Medicaid. They wouldn't take the victim's compensation fund because they would only, do so much. And with the resources we have here in Wyoming, unfortunately, all we have is behavioral. And so I had to go through a court process in order to put her on a CHINS petition, just in order to get my child to go to treatment. So we had to go to court and have an MDT meetings. And, as a parent, I felt like I was giving up on my child because I had to turn her over to the state in order to get her the treatment she needed. And even then, the treatment through the Behavioral Institute that she went to did not give her the correct type of therapy. So when she got out, there were some more behavioral issues, the sexual behaviors, the predatorial behaviors that she didn't even know, and it doesn't register in their mind that they're predatorial actions. They just think that this is normal now. So, we're still in therapy. We're still trying to work through things. But yeah, Wyoming we don't have the resources that we need for our youth that are being sexually exploited online or groomed even.
And I guess it's safe to say that this is a big reason why you're such a huge advocate and your organization focuses on prevention, because it's such a hard road to sort of head down when something is already happening. And so, I know you're a huge advocate for prevention.
I am, but also, just that advocate too for being able to get the proper treatment. Wanting to work towards more treatment, pursue more treatment avenues throughout the state that can be beneficial to our children and to our families also, because, they need to have understanding and therapy and that kind of treatment as well. It's not just the child, because it impacts the entire family. So yeah, wanting to push for more treatment options here in the state of Wyoming for those sexual exploitation or grooming, and hopefully help them succeed a little bit easier.
Ashley, let's pop back to you now, because we never really talked about sort of the outcome after all of this happened and the dust settled. How did that go with your family working through this? Did your daughter try to, get back in touch with anyone online, or, just tell us a little bit how that process was?
Yeah, so I feel like it's pretty common, and for as common as it is, I feel like it's maybe a little bit unknown. Just how, I mean, it almost turns into like an addiction. At 11 years old or in your early teens or preteens, having that attention and that like focus on you is something that is just huge. And my daughter did, try to sneak phones. I mean, she went so far as to try to have a distant family member mail a phone to a friend's house. And I mean, at school, and we had to go through her things, as spontaneously and as often as possible, because if we put any kind of like, okay, it's Tuesday, we need to go through your backpack, she knew and would hide things. And I think that sneaky behavior became huge. I mean, it was something that spread from just trying to be online all the time to being sneaky about everything. I mean, even the things that she was telling her friends and her teachers and us, I mean, it was like lies here and lies here and lies here. And it was so hard to figure out. I mean, we just couldn't trust anything she was saying or doing for a while. And that was super frustrating because that's, again, that's that age where you kind of want to teach your kids a little bit more independence. And it's really hard to do that when you almost have to turn their home life and their school life into like a structured, you know, everybody has to know everything you're doing at all times kind of setting, and trying to explain to her that we were doing it for her safety and not because we were like mean or invading her privacy or whatever is, I mean, you can explain it as many ways as you want, but at that age it was just a fight constantly. And she fought us so hard. And just like you, Crystal, I had 3 young boys that were quite a bit younger and are quite a bit younger than her, and they're watching this, and like, so then, you know, they're starting to ask like, when can we have phones and when do we get to be online? And it was like, at that point it's hard to not be like that parent that's like, when you're 18 and you're out of my house, then you can do that. So it did put a lot of strain, especially on our relationship with her, and trying to show her that yes, we wanted to give her more responsibility and we wanted to treat her like the older kid that she was becoming, but it was hard because she didn't understand the dangers that she was putting herself into.
Is it something that you guys are still working on her with, or has she been able to, or you guys as a family been able to overcome this yet?
So it's still a process. I think, you know, just working with teenagers and internet safety and all of that in itself is a process. Having that background in being groomed, I think makes it a little bit more difficult. And I think we're in a better place now, her and I in particular, because of the work that I've been doing with Uprising. And we've, you know, I've gotten her involved in Uprising. She's actually on the youth committee now. And, you know, just being open with her and explaining in a more base way that, you know, outside of being her parent, I would do this for anybody. That's why I go and speak with Uprising, and that's why I go into high schools and talk, because it's important for everybody and not me picking on her. And I think through that, you know, we still have our ups and downs, and there's still that sneaky behavior. But when I find when she gets caught doing it, she's less aggressive and angry about it, and more willing to like cop to it and be like, okay, yeah, I did it again. And then we can talk about why that's happening.
Wow. So now I want to ask you guys, let's switch gears a little bit. You're both involved with anti-human trafficking agencies and movements. Where do you think is this connection between online predatory behavior and when it can turn the corner into a trafficking situation? Where's that danger lie, I guess?
You first, Chris.
Okay. So honestly, I think once they're groomed and, you know, sending that those pictures and those videos to these online predators, that's when it becomes human trafficking. I mean, under the TVAP Act, it's, please tell me I got those right.
TVPA.
Swapping around all of my, yeah.
There's
So,
always so many letters in professional fields.
oh, so, you know, that falls under that category. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. It is child online exploitation is a form of human trafficking because they're not the age of 18. Even if they're sending text messages, it's still a form of human trafficking because they are not at the age of consent. But when it comes to, you know, the human trafficking part of it, like the in-person human trafficking, I think that it could be a couple days into it. We had a case here in Green River at one point where right as I was starting the organization. And I was so upset. I was crying my eyes out because I heard about this situation. I was going down to the police department telling them, hey, this needs to be a missing and endangered child. This was not a runaway case. It fits all of the criteria, you know, and it was so easy for that to happen, as easy as, okay, we need you to come and babysit our children because our babysitter canceled and we're going to lose our job. And off she went, and then she was gone for 2 weeks. And so, I mean, it's super easy. It can happen to anybody. And a lot of us parents think, that'll never happen to us. We're in a small town. We're in a rural state. Like, it's not going to happen. But it can take a turn just like that. And it's not just somebody's going to pull up in a white van and throw you in and you're never going to see your family again. It starts with that online a lot of times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree. I know not just the selling and trading and coercing kids into sharing videos and pictures. That's one aspect, but also just grooming them to try to exploit them in person. I know even when I was helping do some training down in your neck of the woods one time, we were out canvassing and training hotels, and we got a frantic call from a parent saying, hey, I heard you were in town. Can you help me? My daughter's been talking to this person online, and he sent her plane tickets, and she's leaving tomorrow, and we don't know what to do. And unfortunately, that person was 18. Right? Say it again.
Yeah, that was our co-founder's friend that reached out, but she was 18, but she had special needs.
Oh, yeah. So yeah. I mean, we can't stress enough how quickly it can move from, someone just, hey, where do you live? What class are you in? To a really dangerous situation. And it can be hours, days, weeks, months. But a lot of times those predators, they're willing to put in the time because it's worth it for them in the end.
Well, and I feel like, just to add to that, I mean, I feel like internet as a whole and these chat rooms and these games with chat options, and I think it has made it so that the grooming process takes maybe even a little bit less time, or a lot less time in some cases, because the generation that they are targeting are so technology based, that they often have, I've noticed with my own kids, they have a harder time connecting with people in person, and it's easier for them to make those connections online. And I think that just makes it that much easier for predators to get in and get where they're trying to get with those kids, because they're just so much more likely to fall into that trap because it's easier for them to connect online.
That's a really good point. Go ahead.
Sorry. It's a social norm for them now. I mean, yeah, they don't know how to communicate person to person. And even going into a restaurant and seeing a group of teenagers, most of them are on the phone texting each other instead of having a conversation across the table. And I think it doesn't help with our schools too, because they are on electronic devices doing a lot of their schoolwork. And that's becoming a norm as well. So
my daughter's been able to use that school email to sign up for apps and games and stuff.
Mine too.
Mine too. My daughter's just turned 11, but last year I was, she had to use my laptop a lot for online school. And so oftentimes her school email account was just left up, logged in on my laptop. And I started seeing, thankfully, they were pretty harmless game apps that she likes, but she would download an app, and whenever it said you had to put in your parents' email, and then it would send an email so the parent could hit approve, she would just put in her school email and send it to herself and approve it herself. And she was 10 at the time. And so it's crazy how easy kids can get around any sort of features that are set up to, try to block them or protect them. I have
Well,
one last question. Oh, go ahead.
and it's so easy for them to say, okay, you know what? If the school's monitoring my email address, I'll just go make another one. And we saw that a lot with my daughter too, how easy it was for her to just go make a new email account and then have everything sent there. And we would never know about it until we would look at the history.
Yep, I agree. So one last question for the both of you. Um, at this point in our world, technology is basically unavoidable. I think we all agree on that. There's even if you have like a strict ban in your house, kids have access to it outside the home and in different ways. So, what is sort of the best advice you would give to fellow parents with handling technology and potential online predators? Prevention of advice before, you know, hopefully any of them end up in these situations.
So for me, before any of them end up in this situation, start having that conversation. It's never too early to have that. I have a conversation with my 5-year-old about appropriate videos, about why we don't get onto certain, apps or websites because of the predators that are out there. And it's not a way of talking to them in a fear-based manner, but it is trying to help them start with that rational thinking pattern so that they know, okay, wait, maybe this is a little bit dangerous, or mom said that this was inappropriate. And, also just letting them know that there are some scary websites out there, because we're seeing that children are being exposed to pornography anywhere between 4 and 7 years old now. And that's a big start into, trying to experience that sexual gratification and rewiring their brains.
I agree. And as I've told Terry before multiple times, and my favorite thing to tell people at our parent classes and stuff is I have made it very clear over and over with my kids that their personal privacy is something that they can always expect in our house. They have, a right to the privacy of their body and privacy in the bathroom and their bedrooms. But internet privacy will never be something in this house. They should never have any expectation that anything that they're doing online is not up for their dad or I to see. And I mean, especially with my boys, now that they're getting a little bit older, and we've already been through this with my daughter, just being really open about it and talking about steps. So like with my daughter, I mean, she has a smartphone now and she has very little privileges on it. But we talk very openly about why she has what privileges she has and why there are age limits set on certain apps. And that working towards something isn't really a matter of age more so than it is a matter of showing that maturity and that ability to be open. And just making sure that, I mean, like Terry said, you can't prevent your kids from having access to the internet. So I think that the best thing to do is just to make sure that you are, one, making sure that they're aware of the dangers that are out there. And two, making it so that you are somebody that they can come to if they feel like they have stumbled into an uncomfortable situation, or if they're, like, yeah, one of my friends downloaded that new app and they want me to download it, but there's chat on it. And so they're maybe not telling you everything, but at least being open enough to not try to hide it from you.
Awesome. Yeah, good advice. And of course, there's other organizations like Uprising, like Sweetwater Against Trafficking, all over the country that have amazing prevention programs, parent classes, where you can really get to know a lot more about just like every little aspect of daily life and societal norms and how those all contribute to the dangers or to the safety of our youth, depending on how you approach it. So I highly encourage people to seek those out. If you're not in the Wyoming area, we'd be happy to do some research for you if you reach out. Thank you guys both for sharing today so openly about what you've experienced. I really appreciate you being here. Any last words or shameless plugs that you want to share?
Honestly, I don't have anything. Or you know what? I do. Because as a parent that has gone through this, and maybe Ashley can also agree to this, but as a parent that's gone through this, I know that it's really hard to come out and talk about this or to reach out to somebody because you're embarrassed. You feel like it is something that you could have identified and that people are going to judge you for it. But unfortunately, with the world that we live in, we can't just sit back and think that we can handle this by ourselves. We really need to have a support system as parents and not have a judgmental attitude when it comes to something that our children did. It's not something that's on us. These online predators, in-person predators, they are very manipulative. It has nothing to do with your parenting. Reach out to somebody. Don't be embarrassed because you're going to need the help.
Oh, for sure. I agree. Having support amongst parents and realizing that, I mean, with all things as a parent, but even, I mean, especially this, there's no way to be perfect, and there's no way, no matter how good of a parent you are, to prevent it. If your child wants to find a way to do it, they're going to. So don't blame yourself.
Yeah, those are great words. I'm really glad you followed up with that. Now I'm like, wow, I should have made that a question earlier. Good job. That's a perfect note to end on. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Have a good day.